Thanks for joining us for our News 5 special investigation into Ohio's domestic violence laws. From a failure to serve protective orders to a failure to prevent abusers from buying guns, our investigators learned the state's systems are so poorly set up, they actually put women at risk. And so far tonight, we've heard from the mother of a murder victim gunned down by the father of her children. But a surprising number of violent abusers are rarely sent to prison or even spend a day in jail.
Ron Regan investigated nearly 700 cases filed here in Cuyahoga County and made the disturbing revelation.
That's how many abusers we found were charged with felony domestic violence last year. But 1 of every 3 never spent a day behind bars.
And when I opened the door, he came flying through the door and he threw me against the wall.
She's describing a terrifying night in 2014. Her abuser, now inside her home, had a long history of abusing women, running one off the road, grabbing another by the throat. On this night, she was next.
I couldn't even scream because I couldn't even breathe.
By now, her abuser knows exactly how to game the system. Probation in a 2010 case. So 5 months later, he abuses another. And after just 30 months in prison, he strikes again.
And he had this look in his eyes that I've never seen.
So we tracked every abuser in every felony domestic violence case filed last year in Cuyahoga County, nearly 700. We found 8 out of 10 repeatedly abused women, and punishment often falls far short of the crime.
He puts his hands on my throat and he lifts me up and he starts squeezing me in my throat.
Choking you?
Choking me.
Around
my throat. He was holding me with one hand and holding my throat with another.
Seconds later, slamming her beloved dog into the wall.
I'm gonna die. My dog's gonna die. I grab my dog, I pick him up, and I'm trying to see if anything's broke on him. That's all I could figure, because the dog's just screeching and crying, you know.
Then, a chilling threat.
And that's when he told me he was gonna kill me.
He said that?
He said to me, I'm gonna kill you. And he's holding me the same way. And he says, I'm gonna bury you in the woods.
But despite all of that, a 3-time abuser spent just 12 months behind bars.
Do you think it will help him?
No, it did not. He walked out of there, he's doing the same thing he did when he left. He's a human time bomb ready to explode.
We found 582 of nearly 700 felony abusers struck plea deals leading to reduced charges, including when guns are involved. This repeat abuser got just 18 months in prison, and this one remained free to abuse for years. In 2011, probation after beating his father. In 2013, again probation after punching and strangling his child's mother. In 2014, accused of trying to kill her. And just 6 months later, beating her again. But that long history of abuse equals just 3 years in prison. We asked a top prosecutor, how can that happen?
Doesn't that suggest that perhaps prosecutors are not being as aggressive as they should be?
Believe me, we would love to be more aggressive. But it's actually pretty amazing. A lot of women, it's amazing that they can actually hide.
Diane Russell is deputy supervisor in the Major Trials Unit and says victims often fail to prosecute.
And she wants to believe that he's sorry and that it'll never happen again. So it makes it difficult when Jane Q. Public calls her and says, I want to prosecute the man that you love.
We found only 161 abusers actually went to prison. 235 more never spent a day behind bars. Findings that raise concern among domestic violence advocates.
Does this send a message to abusers?
Absolutely. So if someone abuses their victim and they are arrested and they just get, a slap on the hand, well, they know they can get away with it and they'll do it again.
Linda Johannick heads up Cleveland's Domestic Violence Center.
What needs to change?
There are several things that need to change in order to have a more effective system and to truly hold offenders accountable and ensure victim safety. One is the judicial system. It needs a lot of training, education. We know who's at the highest risk. And so if those factors are in a case, that's something that individuals need to be aware of. That's something that judges need to be aware of.
Still, it leaves many others continuing to feel at risk.
He's going to hurt somebody. His next victim probably won't be sitting here talking to you, whether it be me or someone else.
Prosecutors say they're hopeful the addition of body cameras worn by police will provide additional evidence in cases where victims fail to prosecute.
It's possible one reason for that phenomenon, police are afraid to arrest abusers, and a simple fix could change that.
So simple, in fact, more than 24 states have already closed this giant loophole, but Sarah Buttison learned Ohio's not one of them.
Domestic violence victims are 70 times more likely to be murdered when they leave their abusers. So you would think Ohio would do everything it can to protect women who reach out for help. But we found the state missing a life-saving tool.
I would wake up in bed and see a shadow of him standing over me.
Jane's estranged husband is so violent.
And he would punch me in the head and tell me that only whores sleep.
Or changing her name and hiding her identity.
He used to even shove the card of the person that he said that he hired to kill me in my face.
Because after years of abuse, she finally left him.
And tell me, this is who's going to see you die.
Jane got a protection order.
It was presented to me as almost if it was my armor.
After all, when her husband violates the order, police are supposed to arrest him. But these police reports we obtained show as he stalked her at work, at home, even at the grocery store. Her cries for help went unanswered.
How many times has he been arrested?
0.
It's not a perfect system.
Michael Kilbane is the police chief in Independence.
Unfortunately, it does a disservice to the victims. The entire purpose of those protection orders is to protect the victim of a crime from any further violence, any further harassment.
To understand what's wrong in Ohio, you have to go to West Virginia, where a murder changed their mindset.
I ask Alicia and God to forgive me every day.
In 2008, Desmond Clark shot and killed his teenage girlfriend inside this Taco Bell. It turned out a police officer had pulled over the couple earlier that day, but he didn't know Nelisha Gravely had a protective order, fearing Clark would kidnap her.
People would say, well, it's just a piece of paper. Well, I thought it's just a piece of paper until someone knows about it.
Meet Angela Saunders.
We were really actually asking victims to protect themselves.
She spearheaded the effort to change that in West Virginia. She found, like it is in Ohio, courts and cops weren't communicating.
We just have these silos built up.
Officers couldn't verify orders after courthouses closed.
And what the problem was is that mainly domestic violence doesn't happen 9 to 5.
So she helped create what's known as a protection order registry.
You don't have to have every little bell and whistle in there. It's not about how pretty it looks.
It's a database that includes a scanned copy of every order and is available to every law enforcement officer.
So like Googling something.
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar to that right there.
Like Corporal Tony Crego.
You pull this up and that's all you need to make an arrest.
Exactly.
West Virginia's not unusual. On Your Side investigators talk to officials in all 50 states. We found 29 have protection order registries or something similar.
Before the registry, to be honest with you, a lot of times officers would not enforce protective orders.
What stopped them? Fear of making a mistake.
Are officers more concerned about making a bad arrest than protecting a victim?
I think a lot of times, yes. As bad as it sounds, the courts tend to favor the defendants. The courts tend to favor the protection of the defendant's rights more than the safety of a victim. And officers are aware of that.
Limit the liability of the police officers so, we don't in turn end up getting sued for false arrest.
That's how it still is in Ohio. Officers so afraid of getting sued, they only arrest abusers when they can confirm the order. So how do they do that? They have to call the court clerks.
Sometimes there's some delay with court systems or clerks getting back to us.
In the meantime, victims are left hanging.
They are.
Victims like Jane. In March, she called Independence Police after her husband harassed her. The officer who responded tried to help. He called Cleveland, then Cuyahoga County. No one could confirm her order. Jane's husband went free again.
I was told by one individual it's a piece of paper. And that's exactly what it's been.
Today, he's still on the streets.
Do you feel safe?
Never. Never.
And still stalking her.
Because I don't know what safe means any longer.
After we started asking questions, Independence took another look at Jane's complaints. Her husband was arrested for violating her protection order 6 months after her initial call for help.
So what are our lawmakers doing to protect women? There have been proposals, but none of them has gone anywhere. So our investigators go back to Columbus to hold the powerful accountable, asking them to help the powerless.